My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and that dinner, the one that tore through the last thread holding my family together, happened just 3 months ago. I can still smell the rosemary chicken my mom cooked, the kind she made when she wanted everything to look perfect on the surface. The table was set with her best china, candles flickered between the serving dishes, and my dad had even opened a bottle of red wine he usually reserved for holidays. It looked like love. It smelled like love. But the moment I sat down, I felt it, the tension humming underneath, sharp and invisible, like a wire pulled too tight. My brother, Jake, sat across from me, phone in hand, smirking at something on his screen. He's 32, still living at home, still somehow the golden child. My mom was fluttering around, adjusting napkins that didn't need adjusting. And my dad, stoic, silent, like he was building a speech in his head he didn't want to give. I'd driven 2 hours from the city for this dinner. Mom had said, "We miss you, honey. We want to talk about something important." That should have been my warning sign. For the past year, I'd been working hard, a marketing manager at a mid-sized firm in Seattle, pulling in a decent salary, paying off my student loans, and finally building a life that was mine. I thought they'd be proud. But as soon as I sat down, I knew pride wasn't what they wanted from me. So, my mom started smiling too wide. "How's work, sweetheart? Still at that office with the rooftop view?" "Yeah," I said cautiously, slicing into the chicken. "It's been good. Busy but good. We just landed a big client." "That's wonderful," she said, but the sparkle in her eyes wasn't joy, it was calculation. "You must be doing well financially then." I froze mid-bite. "I'm doing okay," I said carefully. Jake snorted. "Okay? You're living in that fancy apartment downtown. You've got that new car, right? The hybrid." I glanced at him. "Yeah, I bought it used." He shrugged, leaning back, arms folded. "Still a new car. Must be nice not to have to worry about money." My mom chimed in again, her tone soft but edged. "Well, we just thought since you're doing so well, maybe you could help out a little." There it was, the real reason for the dinner. My fork clinked against my plate. Help out with what? My dad finally spoke, his deep voice filling the room. "Your brother's been struggling a bit with his business idea. We've been helping him financially for a while, but it's becoming too much for us." I looked at Jake. He didn't look struggling. He looked like someone who spent more time at bars than job interviews. "What business idea?" I asked. Jake grinned, like this was his moment. "An online sneaker reselling company. I've been buying limited edition drops and flipping them. I just need a bit more capital to really get it going." I blinked. "Sneakers?" "Yeah, it's legit," he said defensively. "There's a ton of money in it if you do it right." Mom added quickly, "We've invested a few thousand already, but we can't keep doing that. Your father and I are getting older. It's time you pitched in, too." I set my fork down. So this dinner was about money. My mother's smile faltered. "Don't make it sound ugly, Emily. We're family. Families help each other." I stared at her. "I already help. I send you money every month for groceries and utilities, even though I live on my own." My father's voice sharpened. "That's different. That's small stuff. We're talking about real help now." My heart pounded. I looked around the table, at the flickering candles, the matching plates, the faces that used to make me feel safe. "How much are we talking?" Mom hesitated, glancing at Dad. Jake leaned forward. 10,000. The words hit like a slap. I almost laughed. "You want me to give you $10,000? For sneakers?" Dad's jaw tightened. "For your brother's future. For this family's future." I shook my head slowly. "No, I can't do that." Silence. Then my mom's fork dropped with a sharp clatter. "Can't or won't?" "I won't," I said. Jake muttered something under his breath. I caught only one word: selfish. Mom leaned forward, voice trembling. "After everything we've done for you, Emily? We paid for your college. We helped you get your first car. We covered your rent when you couldn't." My stomach twisted. "I know, and I've thanked you. But I've been paying my own bills for years now." "That doesn't erase what we did," she snapped. You wouldn't be where you are if not for us. My dad slammed his hand on the table. The plates rattled. We are not your bank anymore, Emily. You take and take, but when it's time to give back, suddenly you're too good for us. I felt my throat tighten, words getting caught somewhere between disbelief and anger. You called me here under false pretenses, I said quietly. You didn't miss me. You wanted money. My mom's eyes flashed with hurt, or maybe guilt. I couldn't tell anymore. That's not true, she whispered. We love you. I swallowed hard. Love shouldn't come with an invoice. Jake pushed back his chair and stood. You know what? Don't bother, Em. We'll figure it out without you. You're just proving you don't care about anyone but yourself. That hit harder than I wanted to admit. I'd spent years trying to earn their approval, working overtime, sending small gifts home, calling every Sunday. But standing there looking at them, I realized it had never been about love. It had always been about control. My dad's voice was cold now. You've changed. You think you're better than us because you make a few dollars more. No, I said softly. I just learned how to stand on my own. That's what you always said you wanted. Mom's voice cracked. You're breaking this family apart. I looked at her, and something inside me broke too. No, I said. This family broke itself the moment money became more important than love. The silence that followed was deafening. The candles flickered. My brother's jaw clenched. My father wouldn't look at me. I stood up, my hands trembling as I grabbed my coat. I came here because I thought you wanted to reconnect. But you just wanted a handout. Mom reached out, voice pleading now. Emily, don't go. We can talk about this. I shook my head. You don't want to talk. You want to guilt me. For a moment, her face softened. Just for a flicker. Maybe she realized she'd gone too far. But then Dad muttered, let her go. She's made her choice. And that was it. I walked out of the dining room, past the family photos on the wall, birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings. Every picture looked perfect. Smiling faces. Matching sweaters. But behind every one I saw now there was always a cost. As I stepped outside, the cool air hit my face like a slap of truth. I stood in the driveway staring at the house I grew up in, the porch light glowing warm and familiar, and I wondered how something that looked so safe could hurt this much. When I got into my car, I expected to cry. Instead, I sat there in silence. The kind that settles deep into your bones. I thought about all the times I'd said yes when I wanted to say no. All the times I'd loaned money, covered bills, made excuses for Jake. It was never enough. It had never been enough. That night, driving back to the city, I realized something. My family didn't see me as a daughter anymore. They saw me as a paycheck with a pulse. But the story didn't end there. Because in the days that followed, as the silence from my parents turned into pointed messages, as guilt gave way to anger, I began to understand something even deeper. If love can be bought, it was never love to begin with. And maybe, just maybe, it was finally time I stopped paying the price. When I got home that night, my apartment felt emptier than usual, like the silence had weight. I dropped my keys on the counter and leaned against the door, still hearing my father's voice echoing in my head. We're not your bank anymore. The irony stung. I'd never asked them for money in years. But that didn't matter to them. It wasn't about money, it was about control. I changed into sweatpants, made tea, and sat on the couch staring out at the glowing city skyline. The streets below buzzed with weekend laughter and headlights, but all I could feel was this hollow ache in my chest. I kept replaying every word from that dinner, dissecting every tone and look. I wasn't angry at first. I was hurt. That deep, confusing kind of hurt that doesn't even know where to land. It's not like they'd screamed at me or thrown me out. It was worse. They'd made me feel like love had to be earned in installments. I told myself I'd give it a few days. Maybe they'd cool down. Maybe we could talk like adults. Maybe they'd realize how unfair that conversation had been. But by the third day, I knew something had shifted. It started with a text from my mother. Mom, I hope you're thinking about what we said. We're just trying to help Jake succeed. It's family, Emily. No, hi. No, how are you? Just a reminder that their priorities hadn't changed. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Then Jake texted. Jake. Thanks for ruining dinner, Em. Mom cried after you left. I sat on my bed, staring at that message until the words blurred. Ruining dinner. Making Mom cry. Somehow, I was already the villain in their story. Over the next week, the texts became less subtle. My mom would send me guilt-laced reminders, things like, your father's blood pressure has been up since that night, or, Jake is doing his best, you know. And then the call came. It was a Saturday morning, and I was catching up on work emails when my phone rang. Dad's name lit up the screen. I hesitated before answering. Hey, Dad, I said, my voice small. He didn't waste time. Your mother's upset, he said flatly. I know, I said. She keeps texting me. You know why she's upset? I hesitated. Because I wouldn't give Jake $10,000? Because of how you said it, he snapped. You embarrassed us. You made your brother feel like trash. Dad, I said no. That's not embarrassing. That's setting a boundary. Boundaries, he repeated like it was a dirty word. That's what people use when they stop caring about family. I closed my eyes. Dad, I care. But I can't keep being responsible for everyone else. I worked hard for what I have. I'm not going to keep giving it away just because Jake refuses to grow up. Watch your tone, he warned. You think you're better than him, don't you? The words hit like ice water. No, I whispered. I just think I'm done being taken advantage of. He sighed heavily. You've changed, Emily. You used to be so grateful. Now you sound cold. Maybe I'm just tired, Dad. Yeah, well, he muttered. Don't expect us to come running next time you need help. That last line stung because it wasn't a threat, it was a promise. When the call ended, I sat there in silence, staring at the phone, realizing something I didn't want to admit. They weren't going to stop. This wasn't just about one dinner or one request. This was about years of conditioning. Me playing the role of the good daughter, who fixes everything, pays quietly, apologizes first. And now that I'd stopped, they didn't know what to do with me. That night, I met my friend Lena for coffee. She's one of those brutally honest types, the kind who'll tell you when you're being naive and hug you right after. You look like you haven't slept, she said as soon as I sat down. I haven't, I admitted. My family's basically on strike against me. What happened? I told her everything. The dinner, the money, the guilt texts, the phone call. I even played her one of Mom's voice messages, her soft, tearful voice saying, I don't know what we did wrong to raise such a selfish daughter. Lena listened quietly, her brow furrowed. When I finished, she leaned back and said, Wow, they really know how to twist the knife. I know, I sighed. But they're my family. Yeah, she said dryly, but that doesn't give them the right to emotionally mug you. I laughed. A broken, tired laugh. It just feels wrong to cut them off. They're my parents. Lena took a slow sip of her coffee. Let me ask you something. If they weren't your parents, if they were just two people who constantly asked for money, guilt-tripped you, and made you feel small, would you still keep them in your life? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She smiled softly. Sometimes blood isn't family. Sometimes it's just shared DNA. Her words stayed with me that night. I tried to distract myself, threw myself into work, went on long runs, reorganized my apartment. But no matter what I did, the guilt followed me like a shadow. That familiar, heavy guilt that said, you're a bad daughter. You owe them everything. Until something unexpected happened. 2 weeks later, I got an email from my landlord saying my rent payment had bounced. I blinked at the screen. That couldn't be right. I had more than enough in my account. I logged into my online banking, and my stomach dropped. My account was almost empty. Panic surged through me as I scanned the transactions. There it was, a withdrawal of $9,850 made from a joint account I'd forgotten even existed. It was an old family savings account my parents had set up when I was in college, one my name was still attached to, but they had full access to. My hand shook as I read the description. Transfer T.O.J. Carter. Jake. I felt like the room was tilting. I called my mother immediately. She picked up on the second ring, her voice unnervingly calm. Hi, sweetheart. Mom, did you take money from the old savings account? A pause. Oh, that. Yes, that. Almost $10,000 is gone, Mom. What the hell? Watch your language, she scolded. And calm down. It wasn't stolen. It's still family money. No, it's my money. That account had my name on it. She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. We just thought you'd come around eventually. Your brother needed help now. You can always make more money, Emily. My vision blurred with tears. You had no right. Her voice hardened. Don't talk to me like that. After all we've done for you. I hung up. I couldn't listen anymore. For a full minute, I just stood there, my phone still in my hand, shaking. The betrayal felt physical, like a punch in the chest. I called the bank, but since my parents were still co-owners of the account, there was nothing they could do. Legally, it was shared money. Emotionally, it was theft. When I told Lena, she didn't even look surprised. You said no, and they found a way to make it a yes, she said flatly. I nodded, tears burning in my eyes. I feel so stupid. I thought they loved me. They probably do, she said gently, but they love control more. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the look on my mom's face when she said, it's still family money. That smug, moral superiority. Like she genuinely believed she'd done nothing wrong. Something inside me broke, not just the daughter who wanted to be loved, but the woman who was done being manipulated. The next morning, I went to the bank and closed every remaining account with their names on it. I froze my credit, changed passwords, and called HR at work to make sure my paycheck was being deposited into a secure account. Then I sat down and wrote an email, the hardest one I've ever written. Mom, Dad, I know what you did. I know you took the money, and I know you don't think it's wrong. But it is. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. I love you both, but I can't keep being part of this cycle. Until you can respect me as an adult and as a person, I'm stepping back. Please don't contact me. I didn't hit send right away. I stared at the screen for nearly 20 minutes, trembling. Then I pressed send and sat back, tears rolling down my cheeks. For the first time in my life, I had drawn a line and I meant it. But what I didn't know yet was how far my family would go to make me regret it. Because by the end of the next week, the real fallout began, and suddenly, it wasn't just about money anymore. The email went out on a Tuesday morning. I remember because it was raining, that slow, cold drizzle that makes the world feel heavy. I thought that after pressing send, I'd feel free, relieved, powerful even. But instead, I felt hollow, like I'd just cut off a part of myself. For the first couple of days, there was silence. No texts. No calls. Not even one of Mom's cryptic, I hope you're happy messages. It was strange. I almost missed them. Almost. But the quiet gave me space to breathe for the first time in months. I started to feel like maybe I could heal. Then on Friday, my phone began to buzz during a work meeting. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. Then again. Finally, I stepped out into the hallway and answered. Hello. Emily. The voice was soft, uncertain. It's Aunt Marie. I blinked. Oh. Hi, Aunt Marie. Everything okay? She hesitated. Well, your mom's been really upset. She told me what happened with the money. Of course she did. I swallowed. What exactly did she tell you? That you accused her of stealing, she said delicately. That you called her names and blocked her. Emily, she's devastated. I rubbed my temples. Aunt Marie, she took nearly $10,000 out of my account without telling me. There was a pause. She said you both had access to that account. That's true, I said. But she still took it without asking. She sighed. Sweetheart, I know this is hard, but she's your mother. She loves you. Maybe you can let this go. Let it go. Those words made my throat tighten. That's what everyone in my family said whenever something ugly happened. Dad cheated on Mom? Let it go. Jake crashed your car and blamed you? Let it go. But this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft. I appreciate you calling, Aunt Marie, I said quietly. But I'm not going to pretend it didn't happen. She sighed again, disappointed. You always were the stubborn one. When I hung up, my chest felt like it was on fire. I checked my messages, and sure enough, my phone was lighting up with notifications. Cousins, family friends, even my godmother. Each message carried the same tone. Confusion, disappointment, guilt. I'm sure your parents didn't mean it that way. Family is everything, Emily. Your mom's heartbroken. She says you won't even speak to her. Within hours, my family had turned into a chorus of moral outrage against me. It was like watching a slow-motion smear campaign unfold. My mom was painting herself as the wounded matriarch, betrayed by her cold, ungrateful daughter. And the worst part? People believed her. By the weekend, I stopped checking my phone altogether. Every ping made my stomach twist. Every voicemail was another guilt trip. Then came the final blow, a post on Facebook. It was a photo of my parents and Jake smiling at dinner. The caption read, "Family isn't about money, it's about love and loyalty." Some people forget that. We never will. Red heart. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments. Beautiful family. So true. People get greedy these days. Proud of you for standing strong. I stared at that post until the tears blurred my vision. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was the performance of it. The way they were rewriting the story in public, turning me into the villain for daring to protect myself. For a while, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't fight it without looking defensive, and silence made me look guilty. It felt like a trap. Then one night, as I scrolled aimlessly through old photos, family vacations, birthdays, Christmas mornings, I noticed something. In nearly every photo, I was the one holding the camera. The one cleaning up the mess, standing off to the side, smiling for everyone else's sake. I'd been raised to be useful, not loved. That realization broke something inside me, but it also freed me. The next morning, I went for a long walk through the park. The air was crisp, the trees shedding golden leaves. I walked until my thoughts started to untangle, and a strange calm settled over me. If they wanted to paint me as the villain, fine. I was done defending myself to people who were never listening anyway. But the problem was, family doesn't stop at a single decision. They find ways to reach you, to pull you back. It started with mail, letters, cards, even a care package. All from my mom. Each one was another emotional landmine. One letter said, "We forgive you for your behavior. Please come home for Thanksgiving." Another said, "Your father's health is failing. He wants to see you before it's too late." And the care package? It had a photo of my family framed with the words, "No matter what." I wanted to throw it all away, but part of me couldn't. Part of me was still that little girl who wanted to believe her parents could change. So when Thanksgiving came around, I did something stupid. I went. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than ever. My palms were sweating by the time I pulled into their driveway. The house looked the same, red shutters, wind chimes, the old oak tree in the front yard. But it didn't feel like home anymore. When I knocked, Mom opened the door with a bright smile, like nothing had happened. "Emily," she cried, hugging me tightly. "Oh, sweetheart, I knew you'd come." Her perfume was the same, gardenia and powder, but the familiarity made me sick. Inside, the dining room was set perfectly. The turkey, the mashed potatoes, the candlelight. Jake was already at the table, grinning like a cat who'd just caught the canary. "Well, look who decided to forgive and forget," he said smugly. "Don't start," I muttered. Dad looked up from carving the turkey. "Let's just eat," he said. His tone was neutral, almost forced. Dinner started quietly. Mom made small talk about her book club, Jake bragged about his new project, and I tried to focus on the food. But there was a tension beneath every word, a storm waiting to break. Then Mom sighed dramatically. "You know, Emily, your father and I have been so worried about you. It's not healthy to isolate yourself from family." I set down my fork. "I'm not isolating myself. I'm setting boundaries." "Boundaries," she repeated, as if the word offended her. "That's what people use when they stop caring." Dad chimed in. "We raised you better than this." I laughed bitterly. "Did you?" "Because it feels like you raised me to say yes to everything you wanted." Jake smirked. "Here we go again." I turned to him. You stole my money, Jake. He rolled his eyes. You're so dramatic. Mom already explained that. Explained what? That you took it because you needed it? That's not an explanation. That's theft. Watch your mouth, Dad snapped. You're in our house. I leaned back, shaking. Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? It's always your house, your rules, your conditions. You take what you want and call it love. Mom gasped. How dare you speak to us like this? After everything we've done for you. I looked around the table. The same table where I'd celebrated every birthday, every holiday, every fake smile. Everything you've done for me? I whispered. You mean raising me to be your emotional punching bag? Your safety net? The room went silent. For the first time, they didn't have a comeback. Not immediately. Then Dad stood up, his face red. If you're going to talk to your mother like that, you can leave. I met his glare. Gladly. I grabbed my coat and purse, ignoring Mom's desperate, Emily, please. But I didn't turn back. As I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face like a slap. My hands were trembling, but not from fear. For the first time, it was from clarity. That dinner wasn't reconciliation. It was confirmation that they hadn't changed and maybe never would. Driving home, I felt something strange bubbling up inside me. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was determination. They thought I'd come crawling back, that I'd keep playing the role of the obedient daughter. But they were wrong, because this time I wasn't walking away to escape them. I was walking away to rebuild myself without them. And that was something they couldn't control. I wish I could tell you that the next morning I woke up feeling strong and liberated, like one of those women in movies who realize their worth and start a new life. But the truth? I woke up with a knot in my chest so tight it hurt to breathe. My head pounded from crying, my throat burned from swallowing too many words that should have been said, and my phone sat on the nightstand like a landmine I was too afraid to touch. It had been 3 days since that dinner. 3 long, echoing days where silence filled the spaces my parents used to occupy. Not a single text, not a single call. My mom usually sent a good morning message or shared pictures of the dog, but this time nothing. I replayed their words over and over. We're not your bank anymore. It wasn't even about the money, not really. It was about the message behind it. That they saw me as a burden. That all the hours I'd worked to support them during their struggles didn't matter. That my independence, my decision to finally save for my own future, made me the villain. The house felt colder now. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder, like the quiet was mocking me. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold twice. My laptop sat open, but the spreadsheet on the screen blurred as tears gathered again. I had grown up thinking family meant unconditional support. That no matter how messy things got, we'd always find our way back to one another. But this was something else. My mom's expression at that table kept flashing in my mind, her lips pressed tight, her voice cutting. My dad's silence, that part hurt the most. He didn't even look at me when I tried to explain. That night, after another round of staring at my phone, I finally broke down and texted my mom. Hey, can we please talk? I didn't mean for things to go the way they did. I love you guys. Can we fix this? I stared at the typing disappear, and appear again. My heart thudded. Her reply came 3 minutes later. Emily, your father and I need space. We're tired of being taken advantage of. Maybe when you understand what family means, we'll talk. I read it twice, then 3 times, until the words blurred. Taken advantage of? My chest ached, as if someone had reached in and squeezed my heart until it cracked. The irony of it all hit hard. I had given them money, time, emotional support, and somehow I was the selfish one. I didn't reply. I didn't have the strength. Instead, I turned off my phone, climbed into bed, and stared at the ceiling until the shadows on it changed shape with the morning light. The following week felt like walking through fog. I went to work, smiled when I had to, nodded in meetings, but inside, I was unraveling. My coworkers asked if I was okay, but I brushed it off. What was I supposed to say? My parents think I'm using them because I stopped letting them use me. The nights were the worst. I'd find myself scrolling through old family photos, birthdays, road trips, Christmas mornings. My dad grilling in the backyard, my mom laughing with flour on her face as we baked cookies. It all felt like someone else's life. Then one night, something inside me snapped, quietly but firmly. I opened my laptop and pulled up my bank statements. The transfers I'd made to my parents over the last 2 years were all there. Thousands of dollars I'd sent when my dad's work slowed down, or when mom said she was behind on bills. I never once questioned it. I loved them. That was what family did, right? But now, looking at those numbers, I saw a pattern. A painful, undeniable truth. The emergencies had started becoming frequent. The amounts had grown. And every time I tried to talk about setting boundaries, mom had guilt me with lines like, "You wouldn't even have this job if we hadn't supported you through college." That night, I made a decision, one that felt both terrifying and freeing. I wasn't going to chase their love anymore. If they wanted space, they'd get it. But this time, I wasn't going to fold. I wasn't going to keep apologizing for wanting my own life. Over the next few weeks, I started small. I focused on myself. Cooked my own dinners instead of skipping meals out of sadness. Went for runs. Reached out to old friends I'd distanced myself from because my parents had always made me feel guilty for spending time with anyone else. It was strange, rediscovering who I was without their voices constantly in my head. One night, I got a call from my younger brother, Ryan. We weren't super close. He lived in another city, but he'd always been the peacemaker. "Hey, he said, his tone cautious. "I talked to mom earlier. She's not great." I swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" "She feels like you abandoned them. Dad's been quiet, but she's been telling everyone at church that you've changed since getting that promotion. That you think you're better than them." The words made my stomach twist. "That's not true, Ryan. You know that's not true." "I know," he said softly. "But mom's hurt. You know how she gets when she feels rejected." I let out a bitter laugh. "So now it's my fault she's rewriting history?" He sighed. "I'm not taking sides. I just thought you should know what's being said. Maybe you should talk to them. Clear the air." I wanted to. God, I did. But something inside me whispered, "Don't chase what keeps wounding you." "Thanks for calling," I said finally. "But I think I need to stay quiet for now." When I hung up, I sat there staring out my apartment window at the city lights flickering in the distance. It was weird. I should have felt angry, but all I felt was tired. Still, as much as I tried to focus on healing, the loneliness lingered. Holidays were coming, and the thought of spending them alone made my chest tighten. But I couldn't go back, not yet. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Not an email, not a text, an actual letter, in my mom's handwriting. My heart pounded as I opened it. The first line made my breath hitch. "Emily, your father, and I didn't raise you to be cold-hearted." It went on for 3 pages, filled with accusations disguised as love. She wrote about how I'd turned my back on family, how I was too proud to remember where I came from. And at the end, the sentence that broke me all over again. "Maybe when you lose everything, you'll understand what we tried to teach you." I folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. I didn't cry this time. Something inside me had hardened, not cruelly, but protectively. That night, I took a deep breath and wrote a letter back. It wasn't angry. It wasn't defensive. It was honest. "Mom, Dad, I love you both, but love isn't supposed to hurt like this. I'm not your bank. I'm your daughter. And I can't keep proving my loyalty through sacrifice. I need to take care of myself now. I hope one day you understand." I didn't send it. Not yet. But writing it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost trying to please them. The next morning, I tucked the letter into my journal. I didn't know what would happen next. Maybe they'd never come around. Maybe they'd cut me off completely. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a quiet strength. Like I was standing at the edge of something painful but necessary, the beginning of my own healing. And yet, deep down, a part of me still longed for closure. For one more chance to be heard. Little did I know, that chance would come sooner than I expected, at a family event that would change everything. A knock at my door one Friday evening would set in motion a confrontation I never saw coming. And this time, I wouldn't be the one apologizing. It was late November when the message came through, a simple, 6-word text that made my heart race faster than it should have. Family dinner Sunday. Everyone expected. No excuses. It was from my mother. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. No greeting, no "how have you been?" Not even a sign of warmth. Just a command, as though nothing had happened, as though she hadn't written me a letter accusing me of being cold-hearted. I could have ignored it. God knows I had every reason to. But something inside me, maybe that same small, stubborn piece of hope that had survived every argument and every guilt trip, whispered, "Go." So I did. The entire weekend leading up to that dinner, my nerves buzzed like static. I kept replaying scenarios in my mind, some where they apologized, some where it all exploded again. I picked out my outfit like it was armor, a soft cream sweater, jeans, minimal makeup. Comfortable.
Calm.
Neutral. By the time Sunday evening came, I was standing in front of the same front door I'd walked through 1,000 times before, only now it felt foreign. I could hear muffled laughter inside, the familiar hum of voices overlapping. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the doorknob. The door swung open before I even touched it. "Emily," my mom exclaimed, her smile wide, bright, and brittle. "You made it." Her tone was too cheerful, like she was trying too hard to sound normal. Behind her, my dad sat at the table, carving a roast with mechanical precision, his face unreadable. My brother Ryan gave me a small, hesitant smile from across the room. The air felt heavy, thick with all the words we hadn't said. "Of course," I said quietly, forcing a smile. "You said it was important." Mom stepped aside, gesturing toward the dining table. "Dinner's ready. Let's not make it awkward." Too late for that, I thought. The table was set perfectly, candles lit, plates gleaming, the smell of roasted vegetables and gravy filling the room. Everything looked just like it used to during family dinners. Except this time, the warmth wasn't there. As I sat down, I noticed the smallest details, how my mom's smile tightened whenever our eyes met, how my dad avoided looking directly at me, how Ryan kept fidgeting with his napkin. "So," my mom began, her voice sweet but sharp. "Work still going well, I assume?" "Yeah," I said carefully. "It's been busy but good." "That's nice," she replied, her fork clinking against her plate. "Must be nice to have money to spare." There it was, the edge in her voice, the quiet accusation laced with resentment. I took a slow breath. "I'm comfortable. I've been saving." She gave a tight laugh. "Oh, saving. I see. That's new for you." "Mom," Ryan began softly, but she cut him off with a raised hand.
"No, Ryan."
"I just find it interesting that she's suddenly so responsible, when her father and I could have used a little responsibility from her these past few months." The tension in the room thickened. My dad finally spoke, his tone low and heavy. "We're not saying you owe us, Emily. But family helps family. That's how we raised you." I looked at him, really looked at him, the man who taught me to ride a bike, who used to say he wanted me to be strong and independent. Now his eyes were hard, cold almost. "Dad, I did help," I said, my voice steady. "For years. Whenever you needed it. I sent money when you asked, even when it meant skipping rent payments. But I can't keep doing it. I can't build my life if I'm constantly cleaning up everyone else's messes." Mom's fork hit her plate with a sharp clatter. "So that's what we are to you now. A mess? Your own parents." "I didn't say that." "You don't have to," she snapped, her tone rising. "It's written all over your face. You think you're better than us because you've got a nice job and an apartment in the city. You think you don't need us anymore." The words stung, but this time I didn't shrink. I'd heard them too many times before. "I never said I didn't need you," I said quietly. "I just said I need boundaries. There's a difference." For a moment, no one spoke. The sound of the clock ticking in the background filled the silence, like a heartbeat. Then my dad sighed. Your mother's just hurt, Emily. We both are. We feel like we did everything for you, and now you're pulling away when we need you most. The old guilt tried to rise in me, the kind that made me apologize just to keep the peace. But I swallowed it down. I wasn't that girl anymore. I love you both, I said, my voice trembling but firm. But love isn't about control. And it's not about money. I can't keep proving I care by writing checks every time something goes wrong. You made me feel like I was nothing more than a walking ATM. That hurts. My mom's eyes flashed. You're twisting this, Emily. You've always had a way of making yourself the victim. Ryan finally spoke up then, his voice shaking slightly.
Mom, stop.
That's not fair. She turned to him, eyes narrowing. Don't you start. No, he said louder this time. You've been guilt-tripping her for months. I've heard you. You talk about her to everyone, the neighbors, church friends, Aunt Lisa, like she's abandoned you. But you never tell them how much she's helped. The color drained from my mother's face. Excuse me? Ryan pushed his chair back slightly, his voice low but firm. I'm tired of pretending like everything's fine. You've been using her kindness against her, Mom. You can't keep doing that. My dad's fork froze midair. My mother looked between us, her eyes filling with angry tears. So, that's it? You're both turning on me now. No one's turning on you, I said gently. We're just being honest. Her lip trembled. You've changed, Emily. Maybe I have, I admitted softly. But maybe that's not a bad thing. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the tile. You think you're so mature. So independent. Well, good for you. I hope your money keeps you warm at night. She stormed off into the kitchen, slamming a cabinet door so hard it rattled the dishes. The room fell silent again. My dad rubbed his temples, sighing heavily. You shouldn't have come, he muttered. Maybe he was right. Or maybe this was exactly what needed to happen, the truth finally out in the open, raw and messy. After a few moments, I stood and grabbed my coat. Ryan followed me to the door. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't think she'd blow up like that. I managed a weak smile. It's okay. You spoke up. That meant a lot. He hesitated, then asked, You still gonna send that letter you wrote? I looked at him, surprised. You knew about that? He shrugged. You always write letters when you can't say things out loud. You're like Dad that way. I smiled faintly, the corners of my eyes stinging. Maybe I will. Maybe it's time. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face, sharp and grounding. The house behind me glowed softly through the windows, the same home I grew up in, now filled with people who felt like strangers. I stood there for a moment, staring at it, feeling a strange mix of sorrow and relief. Then I turned and walked to my car. The drive back was quiet, except for the sound of the rain tapping against the windshield. For the first time in months, though, I didn't feel hollow. I felt lighter, like the truth, as painful as it was, had finally set me free. That night, I pulled out my journal and reread the letter I'd written weeks ago. Without overthinking it, I placed it in an envelope, addressed it to my parents, and set it by the door to mail in the morning. No begging, no guilt, no tears. Just truth. As I climbed into bed, I whispered softly into the darkness. I did my part. And deep down I knew, whether or not they ever understood, I'd finally broken free of their grip. But what I didn't know yet was that sending that letter would ignite one last storm, a storm that would either destroy what was left of our relationship, or rebuild it in a way I never expected. The letter was simple. 3 pages, handwritten, folded neatly inside a cream envelope with my mother's address written in the same looping handwriting she taught me as a kid. I didn't pour venom into it. I didn't even try to defend myself. I just told the truth about how I felt used, how every request for help turned into emotional blackmail, and how I couldn't keep sacrificing my peace to earn their approval. I ended it with something my therapist had once said to me. Sometimes love isn't about giving endlessly. It's about stopping when giving begins to hurt you. I sealed it, dropped into the mailbox on my way to work, and for the first time in years didn't look back. I didn't expect a reply. Not right away, maybe not ever. But life has a funny way of testing your resolve right when you start to find peace. 2 days later, I got a call from my brother Ryan. "Hey," he said, his tone cautious. "You might want to come by." My stomach tightened. "What happened?" "It's Mom," he said after a pause. "She's not taking your letter well." Of course she wasn't. I drove over anyway. I wasn't going to avoid it anymore. When I pulled up to the house, I saw my dad's car in the driveway and the kitchen light glowing through the curtains. I sat there for a full minute, breathing, before finally walking up the front steps. Mom opened the door before I could even knock. Her face was pale, eyes puffy from crying, but her voice was calm. Too calm. "So," she said, crossing her arms. "You had a lot to say." "Hi, Mom," I said softly. "Don't hi Mom me," she snapped, though her voice cracked halfway through. "You sent us that essay just to make yourself feel better?" I stepped inside, glancing at the table. The letter lay there, unfolded, creased, with lines underlined in red ink, as if she'd studied it like homework. "I didn't write it to hurt you," I said quietly. "I wrote it so you'd understand where I stand." "Well, congratulations," she said bitterly. "We understand perfectly. You think we're leeches." "That's not what I said." "Don't lie to me," she shouted suddenly, slamming her hand on the table. "You said we treat you like a bank. You said you feel used. You said we guilt you. How could you write those things to your own parents?" The old me would have cried, apologized, begged her to see my heart. But this time, I just took a deep breath. "Because it's true," I said. "And you know it." The silence that followed was suffocating. My father came out of the living room, rubbing his forehead. "Enough," he muttered. "Yelling won't fix anything." She turned on him. "You're not helping. You should be furious too. She's tearing this family apart." I swallowed hard. "I'm not tearing it apart, Mom. I'm trying to stop the cycle. You raised me to believe family meant love and support, but when it came time for me to live my own life, that love started to come with strings attached." My mother's lip trembled. "You ungrateful." "Let her finish," my dad interrupted, his voice sharp. Her eyes darted toward him, surprised. He'd rarely ever spoken against her, at least not in my presence. My dad turned to me. "Go on." I hesitated. My throat was tight, but I forced the words out. "I sent money every time you asked, even when it meant skipping meals or borrowing from my savings. I kept doing it because I thought it was love. But then it stopped being love. It started being control. Every time I said no, you'd call me selfish. You'd compare me to other daughters. You'd say I'd forgotten where I came from." Her eyes glistened with tears now, but anger still burned beneath them. "So you're saying we're the villains?" I shook my head slowly.
No.
"I'm saying we're broken. And I can't keep pretending we're not." For a long moment, no one spoke. The clock ticked steadily, and I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. Finally, my dad sighed and sank into a chair. "Your letter hurt, Emily. But maybe it needed to." My mom's head snapped toward him. "You're siding with her?" "I'm not siding with anyone," he said quietly. "I'm just tired of the fighting. She's not wrong, you know. We've leaned on her too much. You know we have." Her face hardened. "I can't believe you're saying this." "She's our daughter, not our safety net," he continued, his tone weary. "We didn't raise her to live in fear of disappointing us." For the first time, my mother didn't have a comeback. She just stood there, arms limp at her sides, her jaw trembling. "I did everything for this family," she whispered. "Everything." "I know you did," I said softly. "And I'm grateful. I always will be. But now it's my turn to build something for myself, and that doesn't mean I've stopped loving you." She looked at me, then really looked at me. I saw exhaustion in her face, lines deeper than I remembered, the strain of years of resentment and unspoken fear. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. I didn't want to feel left behind," she said in a small voice. "You have your own place, your job, your life. I didn't want to be forgotten." That broke something inside me. The anger that had been coiled tight for months softened. "You could never be forgotten," I whispered. "But you can't control me to feel secure. That's not love either." She sank into a chair across from my dad, burying her face in her hands. "I don't even know who I am anymore," she murmured. Dad placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice gentle. "You're a mother who's scared of losing her daughter. That's all. But maybe it's time we stop acting like she's a child." Ryan walked in then. I hadn't even realized he'd been standing by the stairs listening. He carried 2 mugs of tea, one for Mom, one for me, setting them down quietly. "No one's losing anyone," he said softly. "We just need to start over." I sat down too, the 3 of us in a small circle that felt foreign and familiar all at once. For the first time, Mom didn't argue. She didn't yell or guilt or twist the narrative. She just nodded slowly, wiping at her eyes. "I don't know how to start over," she admitted. "Maybe by listening," I said gently, "and letting go a little." She gave a small, broken laugh. "You sound like your father." He smiled faintly. "She gets it from me." We sat there in silence, the tension slowly draining out of the room. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was something close. A fragile beginning. After a while, I stood. "I should go. Long day tomorrow." Mom nodded, her voice quiet. "You'll come by again?" I smiled just a little.
Yeah.
"I will." As I left, I heard her whisper something. Maybe to my dad, maybe to herself. She's really grown up. When I got back to my apartment, I sat on the couch and let the quiet settle around me. I replayed everything. The shouting, the crying, the small cracks of honesty that had finally broken through the years of resentment. It wasn't a perfect ending, but maybe that's what made it real. Sometimes families don't get cinematic resolutions. Sometimes they just get small, shaky steps toward healing, and that has to be enough. I looked at the framed photo on my shelf. The 4 of us at the lake years ago, laughing, my mom's arm around me, my dad mid-smile. We'd been happy once. Maybe we could find our way back there, even if it looked different this time. And deep down, I realized something else. I hadn't just stood up for myself. I'd given them a chance to grow, too. Still, a quiet unease lingered. Because love, even when mended, can never go back to what it was. It changes, reshapes itself, sometimes stronger, sometimes stranger. And though I'd walked away feeling lighter, I couldn't shake the feeling that one last conversation was waiting, one that would finally force all of us to face what we'd really been avoiding all along. The next few months of my life felt like watching the tide come in after a storm, slow, steady, cleansing. I had spent so long being the family's safety net that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand entirely on my own, without guilt attached to every breath I took. But I was learning, piece by piece, what independence really meant, not the kind my parents had always thrown in my face, but the kind that grows from peace, not pressure. After that dinner, and everything that followed, I decided to stop waiting for closure from people who thrived on leaving me wounded. Instead, I focused on rebuilding myself. Therapy helped. At first, I sat there unable to even say my parents' names without choking up. My therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Lewis, told me something I'll never forget. "Boundaries aren't walls, Rachel. They're doors, and you control who gets a key." That line stuck with me. I had spent years letting my parents come and go through the doors of my life whenever they pleased. They'd barge in, take what they wanted, money, emotional labor, reassurance, and then leave without even closing the door behind them. But now, I finally turned the lock. I sold my car, the one I'd bought for my brother when he promised he'd pay me back eventually. He never did, of course, but selling it felt symbolic. Like I was reclaiming what had been stolen, not the money, but the power. I changed my number, blocked their calls. My mom tried to reach me through email once, a short, cold message that read, "You've made your point. I hope you're happy. We were only trying to help you grow up." I stared at that line for a long time. Help me grow up. The irony nearly made me laugh. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, I was past that, but because I finally realized something. People who can't see their own cruelty will never understand your silence either. Instead, I started writing again. I had given up my freelance work for months while dealing with the fallout, but I found my way back to it. My stories, raw, honest, filled with emotion, started resonating with people online. I even wrote one loosely based on what had happened, changing names and details, of course. It was about a young woman who learned that letting go of toxic family bonds didn't make her cold or selfish. It made her free. When the story went viral, hundreds of comments poured in from people who'd been through the same thing. I thought I was the only one. My parents cut me off after I stopped paying their bills. You just told my life story. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. There were so many of us out there, grown children raised to believe love meant sacrifice, that saying no was betrayal. We had been conditioned to think financial help equaled emotional loyalty. But it didn't. And maybe, finally, I had learned that lesson. Still, I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss them sometimes. Not the way they treated me, but the idea of them. The parents I wished they had been. The ones who might have sat across from me at that dinner table and said, "We're proud of you, Rachel. You've worked so hard. You deserve to rest." But those people never existed. What I had were two flawed, fearful individuals who mistook control for love. And I couldn't fix that anymore. One quiet Sunday morning, I found myself driving to the park I used to visit as a teenager. It was early. Dew still clung to the grass, and the sky was streaked with soft pink light. I sat on a bench, watching the world slowly wake up, and thought about how much had changed. How much I had changed. For years, I'd lived with this gnawing belief that I owed my parents everything because they had given me life. But sitting there, I realized, life isn't something you owe back. It's something you build on your own terms. I whispered it out loud, almost as if to test the words. I don't owe them anymore. The sound of it startled me. It was small but powerful, like a truth finally finding its way out after years of being buried under guilt. That day, I started a new tradition. Every Sunday, instead of visiting my parents or sending money or checking in to see what they needed, I visited that park. Sometimes I read. Sometimes I journaled. Sometimes I just sat and listened to the world move quietly around me. It became my ritual of peace, a promise to myself that I would never go back to the person who lived for everyone but her. Then, about 6 months later, I got a call from my aunt, my mom's sister. I almost didn't answer, but something in me said I should. "Rachel," she said softly, "I thought you should know your mom's been sick. It's not serious, but she's been asking about you." The air went still. My first instinct was to hang up.
My second was to cry.
But I did neither. I took a deep breath and asked, "Has she apologized?" There was a pause. Then a quiet sigh.
No.
"But she keeps saying she doesn't understand why you won't talk to her." Of course she didn't understand. She never had. I thanked my aunt for calling, told her I hoped Mom recovered, and hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. My chest felt tight, my mind heavy with memories. Her laughter, her lectures, her anger. The way she'd said, "We're not your bank anymore," like it was some kind of punishment instead of the freedom I never knew I needed. I realized then that forgiveness isn't about waiting for an apology. It's about choosing peace over pain. So I wrote a letter, not to send, but to release. In it, I told my parents everything I'd never been able to say out loud, that I loved them once so fiercely it blinded me, that their approval was my oxygen, that their rejection almost broke me, but that I was done living in a transaction where love came with a price tag. When I finished, I folded the letter, walked outside, and set it alight in a small ceramic bowl on my porch. The flame flickered orange and gold, curling the paper until it turned to ash. Watching it burn, I felt something inside me uncoil, not hatred, not revenge, just release. I whispered, "Goodbye," and meant it. A year later, I was living in a small townhouse near the coast. The sound of waves outside my window became my new lullaby. I'd built a modest but steady freelance career, finally able to afford things without feeling guilty about spending money on myself. One evening, as I sat at my desk finishing a piece for a magazine, I looked at the headline on the screen, "Breaking Free from Emotional Debt, When Family Stops Being Family." I smiled. Maybe this was my way of taking revenge, not through cruelty or payback, but through truth. By turning my pain into purpose. By helping others see what took me years to understand. That night, I posted a video reading an excerpt from my article. It went viral within hours. The comment section filled with people saying things like, "You gave me courage." I thought I was the only one. My parents did this too. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. And for the first time in a long, long time, I felt proud, not of surviving, but of becoming. I don't know if my parents ever saw that video. Maybe they did. Maybe they finally realized that the daughter they'd once dismissed as ungrateful had found her voice, and that she didn't need their validation anymore. But if they did see it, I hope they understood this. Cutting me off didn't destroy me. It set me free. Because the truth is, I don't need a bank anymore. I built my own. Emotionally, financially, spiritually. And every single deposit I make now, love, peace, boundaries, forgiveness, goes into a life that I own. Not theirs. Not anyone else's.
Just mine.
That's the thing about losing everything you thought you needed. Sometimes it's the only way to realize what you truly have. So when people ask me how I survived it, I tell them this. I stopped trying to earn love that was never free. And in doing that, I finally became rich.